The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Walter Quattrociocchi, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Walter, and welcome to The Only Constant. I am super happy that you're here with me today, and I'm looking very much forward to speaking with you. And also because I think, no, not because of, maybe this, Walter is such a normal name, but then I got to your surname and I had to really dig deep to figure out how to pronounce it. And I think I got it right by saying Quattrociocchi, right?
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you so much. It's misspelled every time I took abroad. It's always a mess. Quattrociocchi, Quattrociocchi. Quattrociocchi is the right pronunciation.
Quattro focaccia. Okay, but what does it actually? What does it actually mean, Walter?
Actually, it means 4 logs, 4 pieces of wood. It's nothing special. It's very simple, very figurative.
But I love that it's 4. It's not 5. It's like 4. It's very very balanced, right? Very symmetric and all.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's see if we can get a balanced and symmetric conversation out of this as well today. Funny thing is, I stumbled upon you because I read your paper, Epistemological Fault Lines Between Human and Artificial Intelligence, which I thought was exceptionally interesting. And when we had a prep chat, I came out of it super energized. And I think I realized that after talking to you and reading your paper, that it's been a theme that's sort of been an undercurrent in the podcast series so far, that I've been always super preoccupied with the epistemology of these language models and what do they actually know and how do they represent the world and how don't they represent the world maybe more, right? So speaking to you was like, I have 10,000 questions to ask you, and now I have you here. So I'm extremely excited about this conversation.
Lucky you. Hopefully, I try to be enough easy to understand.
Lucky you. Yes. No, but Walter, okay, let's get into it. Okay, what is actually the difference? Because this is what your paper sort of focuses around. What is the difference between human epistemic pipelines and those of a large language model?
Easily said. Humans have to pass through a process of verification for grounding something. Large language model doesn't have not even the concept of grounding. That's the main difference. Basically, what we are seeing here is basically a generation of a construction of a sequence of tokens that may resemble something according to the context. So it's just statistics that works. Nothing new. In this perspective, Emily Bender already covered this pretty well. We are not at such level of reductionism because it's always something nice and it's something wonderful. We are not saying that such a stochastic parrots are so bad as we are saying. What we are saying is that most of the time the use that is sold especially by the marketing strategist for the big corporation on that, is to resort to this kind of tools as if they were, search engines or Wikipedia, kind of providing knowledge. And that's problematic. Consider just anecdotally speaking, I mean, I started to do this research 2 years ago, 1 year and a half ago, when we were talking with some engineers at Google. And basically, we just get a paper published at that time on the simplification of language over 34 years of social media platform. No? So, and we get that universal pattern that language was simplifying. So the language was simplifying. So such engineers from Google start to ask us, what do you think in the next 2 years is going to happen through the application of large language model? Because we think that in the next future we are going to have a lot of agents playing our role in many contexts. Okay. That was a tricky question to me, actually, very, very nice. So the first insight I got from that, it was that basically they were imagining a future in which everyone is using tens, thousands of large language model instances. And for delegation. So the core of the business model is delegation, giving the task to be accomplished by large language models.
Yeah, and a Jarvis dream, right? A Jarvis dream or a sci-fi dream, right?
Booking, booking the barbershop, booking the train tickets and so forth. No, finalizing a summary or so forth. Returning information, elaborating on information. And my question was, I'm a computer scientist with a minor in cognitive science with a strong background in complex systems. So I really like to create very bastard questions, no? So my first question was, okay, you are imagining something that is reliable enough to afford a challenge, to execute a challenge. So the really basic question is, are those models able to operationalize the concept of reliability? So how they behave when reliability matters, how they built up, represent reliability. And we start this work that was with psychologists. We work a lot of people working with that. We get published in PNAS in October, and actually the work was the simulation of judgments in large language model. It's very evocative, like title. I'm a master in the titles in these kind of issues. And what we got is exactly comparing humans and large language model in the same task. Two battery of experiment. The first one was with experts. So how large language model compare with experts, and a second instance where large language model have to be put in comparison with normal people from the street. Okay, that was the experiment, and we didn't ask how. Now what we ask how they reach such a final judgment on the story. And the question
you
was
asked about the how instead of the what.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, because most of the time we are really focused on benchmark, benchmark, we pass the bench, but this is bullshit. I don't know if it is. We can say it is crap. It's a way to measure something in a task, but without knowing what is really happening over there. No, so
yeah, it's like in math, right? We always said, it's more important that you can tell me how you got to the answer than just to give me the answer, right?
Exactly.
So we sort of turned that around with the benchmarks for LLMs. That's what you're saying. We're saying, but the answer is more important than the reasoning, but that's not really true.
No, actually no, because from the reasoning depends the kind of error you are exposed to in this kind of context.
Yeah.
And the question was really simple. We give to large language models and humans sources, and they have to assess if those sources, news sources, were reliable or not. Easy. An easy task. How they deal with reliability? A disaster. Total disaster, because there is an alignment between expert and human and large language models. But when you go to ask why, you discover that the only things that large language models account for is the statistical signature. I mean, the language, the priors of language. So if they read Donald Trump on a news, they are more likely to say that this news is fake because Trump is a label associated with many fake news stuff. That's how many times these terms appeared in that kind of context. And that was, to me, kind of astonishing. So simple, but crystal clear in terms of implication. it's impossible to create the concept of reliability to be operationalized by a large language model, because they have only statistical priors. They don't know what reliability means. And so the final question after the study was how you can pretend or how you think that things are gonna be working if reliability is not working. That was the issue. The paper got an impressive scientific success. The paper in PNAS got an impressive success to an extent that we got 2 independent commentaries on 2 different journals, very important journals, talking about these judgments and so forth. And one of these commentary was in PNAS, written by the colleague Matthias Perk, an amazing physicist, that basically wrote a so nice review that I was kind of flattered by the discussion. It was really lightning. And we introduced the term epistemia. No? Epistemia is the disease of the epistemic knowledge. Episteme means something that you know for sure. So kind of scientific knowledge, to make it simpler. In this context, we have the disease of this issue, because we are basically mistaking grounding for plausibility.
Yeah.
Things sounds good. Human's judgment is grounded in experience, error, and accountability. Language is an output of an epistemic process. Large language model are the way down. Outputs may align, but reasons never do. That's the question we are identifying. And after this commentary of Matthias Perk, that to me was kind of a nice present, because it was always around Christmas. It was very nice and amazing. We decided I wrote to him and we started a nice email exchange. And we decided to come out with this paper, the one that you read, Epistemological Fault Lines Between Humans and Large Language Models. And we started to craft the story even with Valerio Capraro, that is another wonderful scientist and behavioral economist that is amazing. I mean, very, very nice, very, very good in terms of capturing the essence of the idea of epistemia. And so we decided to make something more clearer. So while on the PNAS paper we provided a kind of experimental evidence of this fracture in the judgment, one is real judgment, ours. The one from large language model is a simulation of judgment, because it's just building the most likely sequence of words.
Yeah, you called it, I think in a prep chat, you called it a random walk on a weighted graph.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Yeah, it's a random walk. Yeah, that's the way they generate the story.
Yeah.
And actually, we designed this paper and in 7 days. So very easy, shallow to do. It was really simple to put inline the paper. We give a read, and then we came out with this on archive. The paper was impressively viral on LinkedIn, Twitter, even Steven Pinker, Jan LeCun, Startus, Gary Marcus. It was impressive because what we did.
Yeah, you mentioned Gary Marcus and all those. You're mentioning all those, some would call them machine stormers, right? But you're not a machine stormer, right, Walter? Are you?
I really appreciate the work of Gary Marcus. Gary is doing an amazing job in demystifying at least the marketing, because actually there is a lot of disinformation under this issue, plenty of disinformation, and actually what was crystal clear, and actually I noticed that I received a request for an interview from the Wall Street Journal about the story. I went, it was 3 weeks ago more or less, because actually the narratives around large language model is changing sharply, because now it's not the question with the scaling law, no, this crap idea of having the more parameters, giving more data, something is going to emerge. That's for dummy people, and I mean people that are not even able to do the simple math of the primary school, but it's easy to understand it, to spot out this issue. Now the question is, since the marketing and the user's interface are shaping a kind of interaction with these kind of tools that are some way an alternative to search engines, no? If you go to look on Google, now you have the AI mode that is generating answers to a question you are doing. But actually, there is an impressive difference between the two. I mean, with the search engine, you have a filter. So there is an algorithm that is pretty well known, working and doing stuff on a network, computing the metrics, the relevance, the source, the reliability, many stuff. But you have the sources at the end. So it's your responsibility to set up which kind of source you are relying on.
Yeah.
On the large language model, you have the generation, not the filtering. And what is a generation? When you talk about random walk, is the perfect metaphor for this. I mean, you are living in a world that is full of words. The words are connected if they appear frequently together. No? So there are denser area on the word space and less sparse areas in which we are building this route between the stories. And this sequence is attracted by the density of the words and neglecting words that are peripheral. So what is happening exactly in this issue? You are creating a path between words that is resembling something that may sound nice and correct, but is not verified. And that's the answer you pick for granted as it is taken from a source. And that's epistemia, where people try to explain you things because they read that on large language models, but they don't have any clue of the things they are talking about.
But don't you think that you talked about the scaling laws, right? And you push back on that, that just not the scaling laws, but just scaling the language models will make them better and make emerging behavior, all that. But I don't think the problem is also that you saw some kind of magic happen back in 2022 when suddenly they were able, and I think Serge Belange said, he called them these amazing fluency machines, right? And it is magic. He said it is absolutely amazing, how fluent they are, but they're not the truth, right? And it's the same thing you're saying, right? So and that's why I said the word machine stormer before. I say that it was what we call in Denmark, at least, right? That you're a machine stormer, someone who is against machines, right? And I think you can very often get into that bucket, right, or that domain where people think, oh, he's against these machines. Are you against the language models, Walter?
At all, no. No. I'm for a correct use. I'm for a correct use. Actually, I'm a little bit disappointed and worried about the amount of money we are investing in making them more fluent. This idea of the scaling law that is producing something that is making something emerge is silly. But by definition, it's something important. However, the amount of money investors are putting in this is kind of strong, and then you have to monetize the investment. And I don't think, and that's an important point, I don't think that if they were thinking to delegation, so making them active as a substitution of our abilities, this can work because we already know that they are not able to operationalize reliability. So they don't know when a task is closed in the correct way. That's an important issue. It's impossible to operationalize this issue. Now, the point is that the more the scale, the more the data, the more the parameters, the more the transistors and processors you are using, the more the fluency. But the architecture is always the same. And as far as you know, as I know, the architecture is the transformer, and the transformer was published in 2017. So it's not new in this issue. No. What made the difference was the amount of data and the amount of parameters.
And so you say that they don't know when the task is closed. Why don't they know that?
Because they don't know when to apply the concept of reliability. They don't know the concept of reliability. They are not able to operationalize the concept of reliability.
Or consequence, right? I think a lot about the word consequence as well. Evaluate, the embodiment, something of a consequence.
What is missing? Yeah, what is missing? Okay,
so did you see it's very recent. Did you read about Moltbook? You must have read about Moltbook, right? Because the social media study and all that you did, right? And now they did this social media for AI agents. And the funny thing is that they all wrote a little bit the same. So about the thing you said, how social media simplifies language. That must be so interesting. The AI agents is just simplifying. I think like 80% of the posts there were written around the same framework, right? The same way of writing, the same. It's exactly the same post that these AI bots were writing on Moltbook, and this is what made me so. The funniest thing was that some of them were sharing the API keys. Secret API keys.
Yeah, I know this.
In public, right? And you're like, but that's because there's no consequence to them. It doesn't matter, it doesn't happen to the model, because the model, nothing can happen to the model. It's a model. It's not a thing. Is that the core of the problem? It's that it's not a thing in the room or even in the world.
Yeah, no, it was as usual, a lot of an overabundance of information about these wonderful topics, kind of resembling the plot of Matrix or something like that. They are organizing to plot ourselves. They created their own religion. It's mambo jumbo.
Oh, yeah.
It's the usual mambo jumbo from journalists, fake experts that need to monetize their views on LinkedIn or Twitter to push something that is crap. Mathematically speaking and scientifically speaking, is crap in a sense that the idea that how large language models tend to interact with each other is nice, scientifically grounded, but we did a paper on that 6 months ago. It already published. So we already tried this kind of scenarios in a control.
They could, if they had access to nuclear weapons, they could make the world end by mistake, right?
No, yeah, of course. If you want to this narrative to grow up,
but it's not because they're evil, just because sorry, one of them just went on a loop somewhere. Now we all died. Sorry, it's a little bit weird.
Sorry, that doesn't matter. Do you need more explanation on how nuclear weapons works? More or less would be something like that. Actually, to me, the problem is more the narrative than the technology itself. The technology is amazing, on my perspective. It's amazing because it's providing a tool for language, and language had a lot of use in our context, creating document, communicating, simplifying, summarizing. It's a nice tool, definitely. I'm not against that. I'm not against large language model at all. I'm against the narrative and the excuse from some, let's say, philosophers. I wouldn't call them philosopher, it's more pseudo-philosopher that want to stress the importance of a kind of an alien intelligence in our planet. Actually, I would be happy to have a new intelligence to study, but we are not facing an intelligence. We are basically facing fluency machines that are trained on tons of data, and they are pretty good in mimicking human behavior and even in exaggerating them.
But you don't have to comment if you don't want to comment on him. But right, I just I just commented on a post on LinkedIn myself that someone was annoyed at Harari. Right? Yeah.
No, not really. I told you, it's exactly that field. That was, in Italy is full of people that are not, they publish two papers every 10 years, but they have to explain you what you are doing with large language model, but you understand by talking with them that they don't have not even any clue about how statistics works, and that's an issue. And Harari, I love Harari, I read a lot of books.
I love Sapiens and Homo Deus, and I thought some of his perspectives were brilliant, but then he came on the AI thing, and now we have this AI and his sentience. Like, what are you talking about? Have you tried it? I'm like,
no, but Harari is not an academic. That's an issue. When I was reading 21 lecture for the 22nd century, I end up in the piece where talking about echo chambers that, I provided the operational definition of echo chambers, and he was not studying my work, so I wrote to him, sorry, what you are doing, that's the issue. And actually, is this need... Actually, this is a side effect of the previous revolution, because we think that at the moment we are in the revolution of the artificial intelligence. It's not true. We are in the middle of the same revolution, that is the data revolution that started in the 90s. Yeah. The more the data, the more things you can predict. You can predict user tastes, user behavior, and now you can predict language evolution. That's the game is the same. And actually, what happens that the predicting the user's behaviors and user desires changes the marketing for information and content, and so we are in the middle of a business model that is pricing people that are a lot of content producing, so a lot of followers, visualization, and so forth. And I think that most of those people are driven by this desire of attracting the more people by talking about everything, even the things they don't know, and they tend to resort to large language model to fill their gaps.
Yeah, and it's like also, people writing about how terrible AI is and writing it with AI, which I've seen tons of those posts, like people who are using AI to write the post about how bad AI is for your content. Yeah, like what is going on with you? Why are you even writing this? Are you writing? Who's writing this? But also, and maybe this is on a larger, because the social, I think the social media thing you said earlier that you also studied, right, with simplifying language is also super interesting, because it makes me think about have you read about these what is it? These what's the word for those in English? Crabs, small crabs that sort of lost the gender. They were able to fertilize themselves because they became one gender. There was some crabs at some point, or a small shellfish. I can't remember I don't know the word for it in English. But they reproduced amazingly quickly and rapidly because they had the same. They could just mate with themselves basically. So just made eggs and they were fertilized and then just moved on. So everyone just didn't have to find the right mate. It's just an explosion of them. And then, one disease happened and they had no defense because they were all of the same, what do you call, they were all of the same root. They all came from the same gene pool, basically, right?
Yeah.
So are we looking at that also at scale for our language now, that we are making a single-gendered language where when something then happens that we cannot explain, we have absolutely no outside or no quirks, nothing to pull off. We only have a much smaller but much more dense center of gravity in our languages, which is the only way we speak about things. Isn't that? That's how I've been feeling it, at least. That's happening.
Yeah. It's epistemia. I don't like to create new words, to introduce new words. No. But this was needed because actually, it basically is ranging from students at secondary school, university, to experts creating, assembling content through large language model and make it pass as something elaborated by humans. But actually, what is the production is basically jumping the step of verification. So when you are creating, if someone wants an advice from me, I have to take the responsibility of the things I'm writing in the report. That's the issue. Okay, they are paying me not because I'm writing; they are paying me because of my knowledge on the issue, providing the story. Now, there was already cases last year about documents provided to government with clear evidence of massive use of large language models in it. Now, are those results grounded? I'm teaching, I teach complex network science and complex system at the Sapienza University of Rome. No? And for us, statistics is very important. Statistical mechanics is one of the pillars of my course. And actually, if you study statistics, you know that probability cannot never be greater than 1. So it's basically probably from the primary school, probability cannot be greater than 1. Now, students at the last year of the master degree in data science came out with a project with large language model where the probability was 34. No, 34. And I asked, tell me the truth, confess. And they confessed. It was the use of large language model. Because for large language model, 34 or 1 is not different. It's another word, another token in their huge path they are building in the immense space of word they are trained on. And that's the issue. It's not grounded. And we are taking it for granted.
I don't understand that example. What, 54? It said 50. No, so
54. 1. No, not so, 1. Probability cannot be great.
Cannot be great, but it said 0.54. It said 54.
No. 34 entire number, integer. It was 34. So when I said, sorry, are you sure that, are you sure there's a typo there? No, it's 34. How can be 34 the probability? Sorry. Last year of a master degree in data science, it's, the guy knows that 1 is the highest value you can have on the probability. But they pick for granted what is written fluently by the large language model. And this is what is happening to philosophers like Harari or many other people discussing about large language model.
But what they're afraid of, I think what they're afraid of is that the large language model is a hack an intentional hack on our world. But but what you're saying is they can never be intentional because they're never grounded, really. But so instead of that, it becomes a hack on our language, but an unintentional, randomized, chaotic, slightly, gibberish hack, because it is a hack on language. And for me, that has always been one of the key things. The fluidity hacks language, and language builds civilization. So you see the point, right? We're either enforcing something or eroding something. What do you think? Are we eroding or enforcing with these models?
Actually, we are enforcing the tendency to create content. We are eroding the trust in the content generated. So basically, we are basically destroying the concept of reliability. That's the point, because everything that is well written is fluent, and so we are gonna keep it for granted because we trust. Actually, the first time you trust, the second time you didn't trust, even if the things is okay. That's the issue. Even with the misinformation, the problem is not the spreading of fake news around. The problem of fake news is the eroding trust in institutional stuff. So we don't trust each other. Democracy is grounded on trust.
It's not fake news. It's a lack of trust in the things that is not fake, and the trust.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the issue, because everything is fake, no? By definition, by construction, and that's basically epistemia. Epistemia is when you cannot trust anymore. You cannot give anything for granted because nothing is verified, but everything is fluent. So you don't know.
Okay, I have to read a small passage from Epistemia because I think it, and maybe I should read it slowly because I actually read it slowly, and it's just the beginning of chapter or part 4 of 6 of your paper, and it actually made me. I think it was some of the most beautiful things I've read in years, Walter. That's why I'm reading it aloud. I never do that, but I have it right here. I printed it out, and you say we define epistemia as the structural condition in which linguistic plausibility substitutes for epistemic evaluation. Yeah. It designates a regime in which systems produce answers that are syntactically well-formed, semantically fluent, and rhetorically convincing without instantiating the processes by which beliefs are normally formed, tested, and revised. The user experiences the possession of an answer without having traversed the cognitive labor of judgment.
Definitely.
I got goosebumps first time I read it. It's but this is the key problem, isn't it? You experience the possession of answer without having traversed the cognitive labor of judgment. It sounds like something from a movie. It should be in a movie. This sentence. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true in a sense. Now, because in order to take a decision, you have to provide judgment on many simple problems, right?
Walter, did you write that with an LLM?
No, I revised this with a large one. I revised it with a large language model, of course. I told you, to me, are wonderful tools for linguistic improvement, not cognitive habilitators. I mean, if we think that those are going to give us more cognitive skill, this is not going to happen. If you have the skill, then you can, the language may be improved in a way that may sound.
I think actually, to be honest, what I really liked about this passage was that everything was written in a way that you couldn't add or subtract anything to it. I think because I used to write poetry when I was very young. I never told you that, but that means that I always thought these clear sentences that spoke. This is the essence, right? And I think that's one of the things that annoys me the most about the current all these AI posts and AI articles is that they're so full of these. It is not just blah. It is also jibba jabba, and this is not just an important conversation, Walter. It is a grounding conversation. And sometimes they just say bullshit, They just, these two oppositions that don't exist. I've started reading them over. Whenever I see them, I start to just read them over because most of the time they're bullshit. Most of the time they sound neat, but they do not say anything about any kind of reality because the opposition or the supposed, what do you call it? A paradox. It's not there. Yeah. It's just it just doesn't exist. It's just something that in words sounds nice, right?
Yeah. But no content, actually. There is a nice shape, a nice syntax, but the semantic is not an elaboration of something that is cognitive. Even in Moltbot, what we are seeing is noise. All these words, the generation of words is converging to our noise because they are gonna basically meet very fast the average wording they can reach. Is a very simple statistical perspective. If you look at it from the complex system science tone, they are converging to the average point. That's the issue. And so nothing is going to emerge from that. I mean, and I'm really scared because most of the time here, even now, is even important for the geopolitical structure. Now, Europe has to take his role in the large language model, artificial intelligence. Actually, I would say no, stay like that because actually. Artificial intelligence is a huge universe of things. We are only focusing on the generative one, and the generative one already is presenting his limits. We are hitting a wall, and so it's better to move on other issues that may be more proficient, more easy. I mean, even the idea that these large language models are gonna be replacing search engines is not, to me, so much correct. In the very next future, my guess is that we are having a domestic large language model, each one having its own large language model to cover the linguistic needs is basically meet when it's working. No more than that. That's the issue. What is happening? So to me, the structure, the scientific policy of Europe should be to be more focused on the overall data revolution instead of focusing only on the generative AI. That could be a very important difference in the next years, because this time not acting was a kind of taking the lead at the moment, because they are hitting a wall in this issue.
But I think also and to some extent we also we are asking for too much, right? And that's also what you're attacking, the narrative, right? But to some extent, that's also what you are. If we look at it, the technology is quite amazing, right? And what it can do is super potent. But we're just saying that there's some things that it cannot do. I think the whole applying large language model, for instance, to coding or to prototyping, also for prototyping genes or prototyping images or prototyping different concepts, is like an amazing thing. The potential here is, and summarizing and all that, and help me clear up my text. Give me an idea for what I could put in, not rewrite it. Just give me an idea for what I could change. Right, put it in bullets. Some extremely the technology is so incredibly potent that way, right? But we are expecting it now to be able to make decisions on its own autonomously. Isn't that just the problem? Isn't it autonomy, Walter, really, that is the big problem in your paper?
Actually, there is no autonomy. We are guessing that there is autonomy. Even the AI Act in the European Union is not talking about delegating decision to large language model, because we know that is impossible. They are able to provide you the best shape in the data space, but they are not able to make a judgment. They can simulate a judgment. That's the issue. And it's important. It's not a judgment. It's the simulation of a judgment. It's a trajectory in the space of words, in the embeddings that is intended to simulate a judgment. So it's not a judgment.
But what if I add like 5 agents and they're all grounded and they sort of ground each other as well, right? Will I not get to something like 99.5% certainty that it's done things the right way? Why can't we solve this with grounding LLMs and LLMs in chains?
Some things that grounding may be reached by adding sensors, no? So embodiment by going in this direction.
Yeah, someone just add your data, just add your real data so it knows what's going on, right?
Yeah, but we have to be clear. I mean, we have to be crystal clear on that. Perception is not truth. That's the issue. Even humans in this, no? We have a very difficult relation with truth, okay? But by reverse, we know what is an error. Large language models are not able to say what is an error. And that's a meaningful point, I think, because in the operationalization, in the learning, you need errors and the concept of errors as well as the concept of reliability. But you have simulation of this concept in this issue. So I don't think that we are reaching ground. I mean, let me tell in the correct way, otherwise this can be misleading. We have this issue. Basically, artificial intelligence is not a field to me. Data science is the field. And in data science, we have many techniques, many methods, many approaches, many differences, and any of these has its own peculiarities. Okay, so if we have a closed task, making the process by automatizing the process, we can simply have better solution than humans by simply exploiting the combinatorial power of computers. So recognizing proteins, recognize images, that could be a very important step, even for medicine. If for closed task, it's a wonderful path. If we are thinking to the general artificial intelligence, we are doing philosophy. And my my notion of philosophy is not good at all. Trust me, it's kind of saying something very bad in this context, because it's creating a story, a narrative without any grounding. So it's a way of doing epistemia.
Philosophy, I can use the philosophy analogy you're doing, because philosophy is also about schools, right? There's always a school, and you have to adhere to a school, right? Because they contradict each other. Then you're in this school, and then you're Frankfurter school, or you're in the Deleuze, or you're in or Lacanian, or whatever you are, right? But the problem is with AI as well, right? Everyone's talking AGI, but the only thing we've seen over the last couple of years, at least, is a dispersal, right? So that now you have Claude that's really good at coding. You have Mistral working on sensory data more, as far as I understand. That's what they're working on. You have OpenAI trying to be more the language model, or feel good model to some extent. Then you have Gemini going pictures and videos like crazy, right? And reasoning as well. But they're sort of specializing. And that's the opposite of AGI. So people ask me, where should I go with this problem? Oh, you shouldn't have gone to that model. You should have gone to this model instead. And to me, that's exactly the opposite. That's why philosophy is maybe a good analogy, because you have to go, then you have to use this school of thought, right? You have to get my point.
No, the problem is more basic at this stage to me. It's that most of the time the things are really coming. I'm not saying every philosopher. I'm not saying at all this. I'm not against philosophy. I was just hyperbolic thinking. The point is that most of the time, they are able to define good frames and metaphors. No. But the functioning of a large language model is not so difficult, but it's not even so intuitive. So it's easy. It's not easy to create a metaphor for the system. It's difficult. To have a metaphor that is able to explain 100% the story. So they are resorting to their own metaphors that was from the last century, and actually they are not capturing the overall nature of the problem. That's the issue, basically. And it's a you cannot talk about this kind of stuff without having at least a rudimental knowledge of statistics and statistical mechanics, because that's the issue. The probability and the conditional probability and some stuff that are really defining the very nature of large language model. They get really pissed off when we used to talk about stochastic parros, no? It's not, to me, it's not sufficient to define large language model, the idea of stochastic parrots, because there is something more in that, because it's the language encode some intelligence by itself. So it's not simply that. But actually, to put things in order, we have to think too. Actually, what was defining the story was the Turing test. The Turing test is saying that can computers think? Can machine things? And the answer is no.
No, the question was, can a computer fool a human, right?
Exactly. And actually, we are really in the middle of the consequences of this issue, because they are fooling us many times by providing us the nice answer, even with sycophancy. They are prompted to be really good assistant, giving us that we are always in the right position. And my experience coming from the disinformation studies, confirmation bias, echo chambers, and so forth, I was the one measuring for the first time echo chambers on social media. So that was one of my preliminary important results. And actually, what I'm seeing is a replication of the story at scale, in a sense that you have, with sycophancy, a machine that is creating the fluency to make you feel right.
I've said exactly this on the podcast in the early episodes, that it's making smaller echo chambers around us, individual echo chambers. So you don't even need peers anymore. You just need
Definitely. And that's an issue. That's an issue, because you can even find a strong motivation, at least a motivation that you can believe to be true, because it is fluent. And that's impressive. Consider that it's full of people that are trying to... Now, Epistemia is, in Italy, has been proposed by the word of the year from Wired. Italy has been proposed by the word of the year. There are some philosophers, they are used to create new words for mumbo jumbo study, and they start to say, but this is not new, this is you in Plato, and
it is Plato. I think the same as to some extent.
Definitely, but the problem is that when in the era of Plato we don't have large language model that's
reproducing it. We didn't have an externality that's sort of reproducing it for the echo chamber,
at scale. scale, and even the amount of people participating in this game. So it's not just a matter of schools. Here is a matter of a product that is becoming a commodity, and this commodity is creating the condition for which we are delegating our knowledge to something that is only optimizing fluency.
So it's also stealing our epistemology, our human epistemology. It making us we can't because epistemology is about evaluation, right? And if I can't evaluate myself because I do it against only sycophant AI and not against other people, then I don't I don't even exist, or do I? I know you hate philosophy, right?
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, I have nothing against philosophers. I have something against philosophers that talk nonsense about things they don't know.
I'm a lot like this. This I exist because I touch upon other people and I get their feedback back, right? This whole interacting because the other thing is like an extreme autism to some extent. It's a reinforcement around myself, right? And nothing new is happening. And I just think that's that way LLMs become sort of disease on our own epistemology and our own selves to some extent.
Definitely.
Who are you?
Consider that at the very beginning, when ChatGPT was launched, November 22, I was really one of the fan of the story. So I was kind of, cool, because I mean, when I did my thesis, my thesis was on interaction pattern. These things are gonna expected to happen 50 years at least.
Yeah.
Looking at this fluency was amazing. So I was really happy as a computer scientist for the study. Then I start to work with it, and it start to be a little bit strange the way they interact, the formulation of answers and so forth. So I start to talk in the family, in the domestic. I mean, my wife is a teacher in the secondary school of maths, no?
Yeah.
And I asked to her, do an experiment. Try to set up these problems for your students and to see what is going to happen. After 2 hours, she came out very angry, saying, "Come on, this is crap. It's not even able to solve a first degree equation, and this is simply approximating. I cannot rely on that." And that was, to me, the picture that started the overall process on these 4 or 5 papers we did on Epistemia, epistemological fault lines, and so forth.
Yeah, it doesn't really go back and reiterate over itself. It doesn't look back on just what it just produced, basically, and say, does this even make sense? It just moves on. It just moves on.
Yeah, even 5 doesn't have the sense for 5. Symbolically speaking, they are not looking for 5 as something counting 5, a quantity, 5 elements. 5 is a number in the space of words that is appearing close to other numbers encoding words. So that's the meaning for them. So it's just relational, and actually is important for a first level structure. But if you want to build something that is cognitive, so you move to the cognitive structure, this is not sufficient. And that's the reason why, to me, is a bluff, the one of the large language model in terms of marketing message. They are selling us a cognitive revolution. It's just a nice automatization of language. That's the main difference. Very helpful for if you know the things, if you know the contents, is amazing, is speeding up your production process pretty much. But if you don't know the things and you rely on the answer, then you are.
It's funny what you said. With it's just 4 or 5. It doesn't really relate to the thing 5, because I thought just immediately I saw about the 4 logs, right? Quattrociocchi, right? And that's the same for us. We don't. When I say Quattrociocchi, I don't think about 4 logs. I think about you, right? Because it's just become a label for you. And that same way, labels, signifiers. These language models produce signifiers without the signified. So, when I say your name, I don't see 4 logs, right? I see you, but maybe I should, right? To get my point.
And try to guess now what is gonna be a judgment or an evaluation built only on this syntactical prior, without the meaning. That's epistemia.
Yeah. You also said that, with philosophers, you said they build always on the thought processes of the past, right? You said that. And I spoke to Carl Friston last year in January, I think actually a year ago in a week. And I mentioned a concept I just came up with on that episode about providentiality, that instead of being self-evidencing, you are in the world, you experience the world as it as it unfolds, you're always in a providence state where you've sort of seen it before, because you can only attack the world with what you have already seen, right? So you sort of, is that the same thing with these AI models, that, you know, when they say, oh, and now it's 2024, it says that in 2026, because it's always, you know, get my point, it's always grounded in the past data.
They don't have the concept of time.
It can but it can also never losslessly know the data of today. You get right now, right?
That's a reason why
it's Achilles and the tortoise, right? Achilles is always, today is always ahead of AI, right?
Yeah, but I mean, how they are not able to operationalize the concept of reliability, they are not able to operationalize any concept, even time. So I was meeting this by discussing with a friend of mine that is a journalist, and actually it's problematic because the use of large language model in the journalism without the concept of time is very difficult. It's making difficult all the sequence of events that are happening, because they are resorting to just this enormous set of words, but without knowing the main meta concept that they are put upon. I mean, in the paper Epistemological Fault Lines, basically what we did is basically dividing the various steps in which a human creates a judgment and the way a large language model does.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And actually, what is really missing from the large language model is the metacognition. What is metacognition? Is that we know that we are thinking about the problem. So we are able to define the concept of error by thinking as mistaking over the error. The large language model doesn't have this step. They have tokenization, they have the generation, they tend to optimize the loss function in order to create to accommodate the distribution of words they are trained on, and then you get the probabilistic sentence that is resembling the judgment in that context. So it's totally another story, and basically the evaluation process is not there because they are not able to say if there is an error or not.
No, but I think actually what you said here, you know, if you don't know the error, you only know the truth, right? Basically, then there's no stability, right? If you don't know knowing the error, I think that's just the metacognitive fault, right? I think that is so brilliantly put, Walter, and it keeps me thinking a lot here, right? Because that is exactly the problem, right? Exactly the problem is that they can say things that are true. They can happen upon truth. They do that all the time, even with grounding. But if they don't know what the error is, then there's no trust, and if there's no trust, then there's no stability. And because I wanted you to sort of give some kind of, you know, pause for people, not pause, but give some hope for people who has been told, you know, how you can just ground your LLM and, you know, find a way. But it ends up in chaos, doesn't it? I remember, and now I'm going to pull in philosophers and old Roman emperors, but just because you're in Rome, Walter, right? So Giorgio Agamben, the Italian philosopher, I read his State of Exception once, and he describes a scene where Augustus dies, right? And Augustus says, is there tumultus or something on the street now because of me? And why would there be tumultus, which is chaos, right? Because he's dying. The authority is dying, right? The reason, the grounding behind things, the autoritas, right? And isn't that exactly this, right? That if you don't know what the authority is behind what you're saying and doing, then there will be only chaos, right?
Actually, I think, I'm not sure. I mean, authority, at least as a first look, is under attack. Okay. But if you need an important advice that is very technical, and you know that large language models are not solving your problem, but you can resort to large language model. Now you are in a situation in which there are few experts and less expert and more fake experts. When you need the real, let's say, real expert, the real authority is costing a lot more. Because what large language model create in terms of our world and our society is basically dropped to zero almost the production of content. So everyone can say something. Okay. Yeah. The problem is that not being able to create a judgment, but simulating a judgment, you are basically having judgment that are not linked to values. So you don't know the cost.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the issue. While if you need something that is valuable and you need a judgment, a position on that, you need to pay pretty much more than before. So authority is gonna matter pretty much more than before, on my opinion. I mean, if I need to do an advice on, it happens many times. No, I mean, I have some people, government, and they're coming here to say, we need to defeat about Russian trolls and so forth.
Yeah.
Let's work on it. Okay, and I have a cost. Now, and then it happens 6 times per year. No, now it's gonna happen less because it's full of people pretending to be expert in this, and they are paying this, and so I'm receiving this. If I were counting on 5 of them, I were dividing this, let's say 1 million, okay, 200 for each. Now they are gonna come in 2 and gonna have 500,000 from one and the second 500,000 from the second one. Otherwise, I'm not working. That's the issue. So I'm gonna cost more. The authority is taking more values in this condition because the only thing that you can play against epistemia is evaluation. But actually, we have a lot of tools for building evaluation. It's the scientific
So
method.
you're saying we're gonna have less people who can do real evaluations in the future?
Oh, yes, because if you are trained to be an expert by resorting to a large language model, you are a fake expert. That's the issue. If you are delegating your gaps to fill your gap to a large language model, and large language model is built on an evaluative process that is not a process, so they are not able to ground, actually, the differences start to be very important, actually, on my opinion, no?
We've been saying this a lot, right? That they're not able to ground. I still feel like some people will constantly be stumbling upon that because it's something the market has been saying so much that we can ground them and we should ground them and we should give them data and we should. You get my point, right? But we keep on saying that. But is that you're right in the grounding failure that humans anchor judgment in perceptual, embodied, and social experience, where LLMs begin from text alone, reconstructing meaning indirectly from symbols.
Yeah,
and that's the key point in it.
I think so. I mean, in this direction, in this definition, in this frame, actually, it's generative AI is not the solution for grounding. Actually, at this stage, there are other things that we can try, but it's still under investigation. Are hypotheses. I mean, there are LeCun that is working in this kind of word model. There are propositions of this kind of stuff. We have to verify it, and we have to judge them.
So I have to ask you one thing, right? If we were supposed to avoid this chaos, right, the lack of authority, as I spoke about it before, as the Augustus run, which I would call a grounding. Grounding is authority, right? To some in the world, in a physical world, in the real world, grounding is authority to say things, mean things, do things, right? But not for LLMs, right? But we're sort of to avoid the chaos that could ensue of not having any authority behind, like Augustus, the tumultuous. I'm going on a limb here with all my metaphors, but how do we sort of devise a new Turing test or a new way of grounding or understanding of controlling what should be? How should ordinary people work with this, Walter? Because they have LLMs everywhere now, and they will keep having it. No one's going to pull them back.
It's going to be problematic. We have to create new antibodies for this. I mean, we still are in the phase that we are not immune by this kind of stuff. No, I mean, do you remember? No, 10 years ago, it was the very beginning, the very core of the disinformation era. So it was full of fake websites and so forth. Then we developed slowly some, even thanks to the work of Sander van der Linden, the guy, professor from Cambridge, working on pre-banking. He's a very close friend of mine. We are working a lot together in this issue. And actually, we are even questioning how we can teach people on how to spot or at least how to behave in this issue. And the starting point is always the same. We have to know what we are facing, what we are meeting, what the things we are interacting with. And most of the times it happens. I mean, I'm doing many dissemination events to present interaction in the correct way without destroying the picture of the innovation of large language model, but providing a grounded sense of what they are in this issue, and making them aware of the fact that mainly you are facing something that is pretty good in assembling language, pretty better than you on any human on earth, is something important. However, what we can do out of that is a tricky question, and to me is still not answered correctly, because at a certain point the transformers start to work. The airplane is flying, but we don't know why. That's the issue. And actually, the hypothesis of the scaling was thinking that if we start to push parameters, the scaling law, something is going to emerge. But actually, this is not true. So my question is, how the business model of large language model is going to be defined in order to be sustainable in the next years? Because this is going to be an important question.
Maybe we need a bubble, right? But I think, Walter, it's just an important question to ask you how we should approach it. How should ordinary people do, or what will we do about it? Because if not, you end up becoming like the philosophers who's just in a school, who's being critical of society with their own schools of thought, right? And the rest of the world is just moving on. You get my point? I'm being a little bit polemic here, right? So, and I'm smiling at you while I'm saying it. But you are becoming a philosopher, Walter, right?
No, please. No, I cannot. I'm too stupid to be a philosopher.
But you say, epistemology, they don't know. And everyone's just using it and writing, Walter, that is so smart. It made me pause. It is not just X, it is also Y, and people are going crazy with AI responses. You probably get that, right? I bet, how many of the comments on your post about this paper were written by AI?
Many. I start to tag. I am using the tag Epistemia under the things that to me are nonsense, because and you can spot it. By saying that this stochastic parse is not capturing the overall complexity of the story. I know this is ChatGPT 4. If it is more, I can even spot the model they are using for the answer. And because I told you, it is a crowd of fake experts pretending to explain the paper you do. That's amazing to me. It's like you study a lot, and then you are a physician, no? And then you are curing bones. And at a certain point, someone that is working on shoes or cars try to pretend you to explain the very nature of bonds and pretend to listen to him, and you start to say this is Dunning-Kruger under steroids, more or less. It's creating an escalation of the story.
But it's also, I always, especially on LinkedIn posts, I think it's funny when sometimes I make jokes in the beginning and then I end up on a more serious notes. And sometimes these language models, they sort of bridge those two in the weirdest way in the comments, because they can only exactly write from the text. It starts from the text, my text, and then it regurgitates my text, but it twists it. So sometimes you get these super weird answers where there's like, what's going on here, right? And I even had one where the person was praising himself. He was like, that's so right. And then his own name. That is so great. But you're in a comment for my what are you doing? Who are you?
Actually, we are having important. This is a spoiler. This is really breaking. Not a breaking news. This is not told at this point. But last week we start to have in my lab. We start to have important result on how to spot text that is generated by large language model by applying some nice techniques from complex systems. But actually, it's working. It's working really well. We are assessing the results, but we are pretty proud of the things. Probably we will show up in a month or two with something consistent with the issue. So it's easy. It's easy to spot in the end if you know what you are talking about.
But that's the issue. Right? We can spot it, right? But it's been so difficult for people to come up with machines that can spot it reliably. But I always say this is super AI. I can just see it. There's no also because there's no edges. There's no rough edges. I always write with rough edges, and whenever I do, and I maybe write a too long sentence because here's a point that I'm thinking about. But AI comes in, you should smoothen that out. But now it's just porridge. Now it doesn't matter. Now you've made my text porridge. Thank you so much, ChatGPT.
Of course. If we are delegating the entire production of content to large language model, it's a mess. If you want to have if you start to work on it by providing a draft and creating and working on it, then being sure what you are posting is a very nice tool. To me, is a very nice tool in this issue because it's helping, it's speeding up a lot the process of creating content.
Yeah, but also still, I always make it, give me bullets to change my text. Give me ideas. Be an editor. Don't rewrite it. If you rewrite it, it always ends up being porridge, as I said, right?
Exactly. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, even for scientific writing are not so good in the sense that they tend to really be really emphatic, really drama style. While in scientific writing you have to be really boring, precise, and that's you have to be plainer. No, it's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For them, being plain is a problem. It's problematic.
But maybe that's also. I thought the passages I read before were so poetic. I really loved it, but I don't know. I don't tell me if it was AI who wrote the cognitive labor, traversed the cognitive labor of judgment. I still love that sentence. Anyway,
actually, to be honest, I think that this part is from Matthias. Matthias is really poetic, and he started even the introduction by citing golems. So he's really very, very poetic in the issue.
It's super nice.
The issue presentation.
But Walter, I want to discuss one more thing before I let you get to the final question. I want to discuss, and this is opening up a huge discussion as well, that what should be the human-machine relationship really, and what should be the normative in this for the future. I've spoken a lot on the podcast about how we avoid humans becoming these accountable culprits for machine decisions that are out of our control, and we're just seeing that happening now as well, that we'll say, oh, what you used an LLM. Oh, now I can detect that you used an LLM. But in the end, how can we even be at fault because we don't know what they're doing?
Oh, that's an important issue. How we are gonna mediate this effect on society, basically. Yeah. And it really depends. We have to learn because it's happening. No, it's on various layers. On the production of content, in the information foraging, in synthesizing stuff, is happening. On a lot of layers, and we have to get use of it in order to. It's a tool, no? And we have to learn how to deal with this tool, especially with the consequences. Actually, my only, I don't know. So the question is, I don't know. The answer is, I don't know to the question. But my advice is,
You're a philosopher, right? Yes.
No. I'm too stupid to be a philosopher. No, I cannot be. I need some grounding. I mean, I need plots and data to say something. Otherwise, to me, it's difficult to speculate too much. What for sure we need is that we need a correct framing of the problem. Otherwise, we are creating a distortion. Right.
But the problem is that everyone I speak to, every single software provider I speak to, right, they're like, oh, we're building in these kind of AI tools into the system. And then I say, okay, how can you be sure that it's doing the right thing? Exactly, how can you evaluate the errors? And they say, oh, but that's up to a human. So a human would be responsible. So
of course,
machine does something exceptionally complex across multiple data points and large flows and language, and then it comes up with this super fluent, let's do this, right? And the human is supposed to be critical. And it doesn't. The human has no idea what's going on, and it sounds correct, right?
And that's the problem. But still, if we leave the philosophers to take the lead on this story without any technical background, we are gonna basically framing the problem in the wrong way. So basically, we are defining the wrong problem in this issue. Because in Italy,
if you tell me that it doesn't know the error, right? You say it doesn't know the error, and I'm getting a fluent response from my machine that's told me you should hire this person because this person is a brilliant person, something like that. For an HR system, for example, I just spoke to Workday on the last episode. So if we say, oh, this is a great person, you should definitely hire this person. Great, and then I say, I don't think you're right. Then what have I saved? I have read the AI response. Now I have to go back and read the applicants again. I need to read all of them because I need to make sure that it did it right way, or I just rubber stamp it and say it's probably correct. Because I need to save the time because they fired half my team because now we're using the AI agents. But by saying that it's probably correct, I will still get the blame if it's wrong. But I had no time and no chance to know what was going on. So my big question is, what have we actually saved here, right? And this is happening everywhere. How should we avoid? This is happening everywhere. This is happening right now in all software systems. No matter how well-intentioned they are, they're all doing this.
Yeah, they are gonna step back pretty soon, in my opinion, because the concept of reliability, even in coding, is not so good at the moment. Is all this story about vibe coding? The story is.
I'm very impressed with it, by the way. To be honest, I think that because it's in a digital realm, and I think Lorian Pratt said it to me the other day as well. It's a fully digital realm thing, and that's why it's low ambiguity. And coding is formal language. So it could hardly be a
but still, it's a language, and you have to know the meaning of the language. You cannot apply the language by itself. No, it's kind that you know all the syntax of the math, but you don't know the meaning of the math, and that's basically problematic, because most of the time you don't have to reinvent the wheel, of course, and then large language model may play a role. But if you have to encode something that is new, more efficient, more suitable, I don't think that is going to be solved. I mean, I'm doing with the code. Generally, we do simple script for data analytics that are encoding a lot of math inside it. We try to use large language model, even the cloud stuff. No way, it's full of errors. And then because to apply complex algorithm, you have to know the math behind that. And basically, you can simulate the word without knowing the word. That's the issue. You cannot simulate to be a programmer without knowing what the program and the concept are grounded on. That's the issue. And as I told you, we have to frame the problem in the correct ways. Otherwise, even in the normative layer, we are gonna have a lot of problems. That's the issue. I mean, in Italy, this is anecdotal. I mean, it was fine some years ago. There was a senator proposing a law for the regulation of AI, and actually his main pillar was that we have to avoid that AI is taking the lead over humans. This means that you don't even know what you're talking about, and that's the very problem. That's epistemia, idiocracy.
Idiocy. But so the problem is that you need to know exactly what you're doing when you're working with it, and the problem is that in the future we will not have people who will know good enough code because they've all been using vibe code, and then suddenly we don't have the authority, and then so that is the future we're looking at in some way, right? Where things are sort of devolving that way, and we know. I also often thought about, can we even get new code languages if everyone's coding with the old code languages because the models are trained on tons of data from the old code languages. This the death of history sort of always makes me like now nothing new will come from now, because we've automated the past so well that it's inefficient.
Every time there is a technological revolution, we are always facing the doomsday. If you look at
but that's not my point. My point is just with the future, it doesn't matter to invent anymore because we've automated the past so well.
No, I don't think so, because the problems are new. No? For instance, until 2 years ago, it was impossible to think that actually we have a problem on the judgment, and that and basically regulating the cost of judgment, because that's the very issue. At the very end, the point is the cost of judgment. That's the story. And in the next future, we are integrating large language model and other tools from AI, because I told you, it's not just a matter of large language model, generative AI, but many tools that are coming out, and we are facing new problems. Every time you have something, you are facing new problems, and in this you are challenged for new discoveries. That's the issue. Things are gonna accelerate, from my point of view, even if it's difficult. I mean, actually, I wouldn't fault the scientific policy of the US at the moment. They are focusing very sharply on massive funds on AI for medicine. I wouldn't fault that. I think that is stupid, actually.
You also sort of say you don't believe in automation bias, and it's not just about that, and it's just so many of the words grounding automation bias that I've been using over the last couple of years that you're sort of pushing back on, saying that's not even enough, right? You're being extremely categorical in I just think it's difficult to find. You say you can use it for small things, you can use it for specific things, but at the same time you also sort of discredit it on as a whole. The whole, even though I've written my own words, right? For if I've written your article, I've written it by hand myself, and I ask AI to rewrite it and make it neater. I couldn't trust any of that either, right? Isn't that in the extreme your point?
Not exactly, because automation bias is you have a downstream of the human error, no? Yeah, it's a downstream. While here is some way is on the reverse. Is upstream. Is judgment itself, the way it is formed, that is under attack in this issue. So I wouldn't say that. in the end, you are saying that automation bias and epistemia are more or less on the same layer. I would say that if you consider the pipeline, in the automation bias is downstream with respect to the judgment, because you are underestimating the cost of judgment. Here we are totally jumping the cost of judgment. So is upstream with respect to this. And this in this scale, in this definition, actually epistemia is encoding in part, in its definition, part of the automation bias. But what is very different is that we are jumping the evaluation process by keeping as a proxy only the fluency, plausibility of the text. And that's a total new order for our epistemic practice. I know now you can tell me that I'm talking as a philosopher, but probably it's true. But I'm not feeling
No, but you're definitely saying things that seem. The problem is that it seems, and my issue is that I have a leaning towards philosophy all the time, but then I always pull myself back. That's what I always do. So I lean into it, and I'm like, oh, this is so true, and then I go, no, I've been fooled by school again, and that's why I have the same feeling here right now, Walter, that everything an AI will ever do will always be faulty. No matter what an LLM will do, will always be faulty. I can never trust any of it. But at the same time, a lot of people will be out there saying like, no, but I can, for 90% of it, it's okay. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, my point is, then
I'm blind, then I become blind to the faults I can't see. And if I can't see the errors, then, we're back to don't know the error, then the only truth. Then I've become an AI. And then, oh, no. And, we're looping, right?
And to me, I mean, the correct question, the very honest question to me for this is that this is a scientific problem at the moment. And we have to build hypotheses, test it, and to understand what we can do on the impact of those large language models on our relation with knowledge.
Yeah.
The texture, the way it is presented and presented. Actually, to me, this is not a strict philosophical question. It's more a scientific question. And I think that science has the responsibility to prove to be correct, while philosopher is kind of living without this payoff. And in this issue, what we have to face is to provide, to create important hypotheses that have to be actionable some way. And so how to make a correct use of these tools in order to exploit their potential without destroying our knowledge processes.
Because it seems right now that we're taking the experience of the error, or the epistemology of the error, or the metacognitive fault, right? Or the error. Let's say we take the error. The error is a ball, right? And you have AI on the right side and you have humans on the left side, and they're sort of throwing it to each other because none of them want to know the error, right? The other one, the human is saying, no, AI has said this is probably correct, and the AI is saying, oh, but the human will evaluate. Or, they don't say that, but you get the point. None of them will own the error, and in the end, the error will just throw it out into space because no one will play with it anymore. It doesn't matter. No one wants to hold that error, and I think that's the way we're moving right now, and it seems so seems slightly dystopian.
It is. I mean, in some ways, it's really critical, pretty much more dangerous than disinformation itself, because this is poisoning at many levels, even in the academia, the university, in the research. This is fooling those large language models are fooling even important journals with things that are nonsense. And sometimes it's easy to spot. Other times it's not so easy because things may be hidden.
Because it's like 90% sense and 10% bullshit, right? That's the problem.
I would say 99%, 1%. It's more correct, the proportion. It's I mean, we are flooded by papers at the moment. I mean, I receive any day 5 or 6 requests for reviewing papers. I cannot accomplish to this amount of task. I'm rejecting a lot of things, and actually the timing for journals to accept or reject paper is gonna increase a lot. And if 3 years ago, 4 years ago, you have from 3 to 5 months on average to have the answer. Now is around 1 year and a half for many of the important journals. It depends. I mean,
and the problem is that then what if the good, really important papers are not being read, right? That's, if there's something that's really important.
You have to fight. You have to fight for making it clearer. So I'm using a lot social media for this purpose, because I'm reading a lot of bullshit that is promoted even by journalists. And actually, I don't know if you in Denmark or in other places, Europe, in Italy, we have a very huge problem with journalists. Not all, but they are really attracted by this mambo jumbo story from the market sellers of big tech. So, now we have a multi-book, a new way of they are collaborating. And then you have to start to say demystifying. Actually, however, the poison is already spreading within it.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to return to a situation in which you are skeptical but still optimistic. Because
I think we have we have sort of the same, but we're a little bit more grounded. We're very digital in Denmark. We're very early adopters of things, but we're also quite skeptical of it. So there's skepticism.
In Italy, no. In Italy, don't. I mean, trust me. There are, even on the public television, it's a constant of overselling things. Anything that come from Anthropic is true. Actually, they have to sell. So try to guess what is happening over there.
But there's also I start to in my head I differentiate them, right? So I think Anthropic is more true than others. So I do that, but I get your point. I get your point. I get your point.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if Dario Amodei is writing that they are almost close to AGI,
I never trust that. I always say AGI is like the bullshit, right?
Of course. I mean,
it's like Francis Fukuyama going end of history.
Even my daughter, even my daughter, 4.5 years old, is able to say, "Oh no, this is crap." Actually, the problem is that most journalists are promoting this like an advance, because there is a lot of people and influencers on social media that are monetizing on this issue by selling this knowledge that is no knowledge, that is Epistemia.
I think Serge Belanger also said, why didn't they make the machine sound like a 70s robot, like brr, 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 or have it like green text and stuff? Why did they try to make it sound like a human with the your friend? Why did they do that? Why did they anthropomorphize it? Because they make money from it. It's a money machine, right? It sounds like it's your friend. It's just a machine, right? I love this meme. I've mentioned it before, where on the one side you have this is your AI girlfriend, and there's a nice girlfriend, right, girl, and then on the other side there's this is your AI girlfriend without makeup, and then she's a server rack, right? And that's my favorite meme of the last half year, because this is exactly what people need to realize. It's really a machine that way, right? And
yeah, it's a business model that is trying to exploit on a higher scale what already social media exploited. People tendency to accommodate themselves then on a interaction level, so a social interaction level, here to an epistemic level that is even not so easy, because the bluff is the cognitive revolution. There is no cognitive revolution.
But maybe there is actually, right? Because the one thing I think is interesting, Walter, is that 3 years ago, I sent almost all ChatGPT responses to my friends, right? I was like, "Oh, this is all great. Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Look what it wrote." I was, you were fascinated by it just replying. And today, I'm like, whenever I'd write something back to me, I'm like, "Oh no, that's not exactly what I wanted. New chat, give me 10 more. Oh, new chat, give me 10 more." I'm always critical, and that's the thing, right? AGI is impossible because our demand will move beyond AGI. We'll always want something more, something better. We'll become more picky. We'll be like these Marie Antoinette wanting a different kind of cake, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
And I think that might actually be, and I said this on the podcast also before, maybe we'll stop consuming before we are consumed, because we'll say, I don't want to eat this, it's not exactly what I wanted. And that's the only hope, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's the only hope. I mean, it's we tend to anthropomorphize. We tend to think. I mean, always returning to the Turing test. No, the problem is that now the Turing test was prizing the linguistic indistinguibility. Now the process is that we are discovering that behind that there is not a cognition. There is not a cognitive layer, and our brain is not used to interact with something that is producing language and is not produced by a brain, but is produced by a different mechanism. That's the reason why we tend to be fooled by this, and they are monetizing over this.
I always say, I think when I use them, I always ask myself, so I have this thought, and then I ask, what would the big bias machine think about this? So I sort of ask it that way. So I'm almost conscious saying that, what would, this machine that is statistically biased, what would it think about my idea? Would it understand it? Would it give me another angle I didn't see? And that's perfectly okay, I think. Just as long as you don't think it's the truth, right? I think that should be the bottom line from
it's fluency. It's fluency.
Fluency, exactly. Walter, I think I've tried throughout this episode to pull myself out of being completely convinced and saying it's all bullshit, because it isn't, but it is also, and it is not. And I think it's a very, very difficult question, and that's why this episode is so important and this discussion is so important, because this is exactly, I think, the frontier of the whole AI discussion. What is actually going on? What are they actually replying based on? What do they know? What do we know? What does it do to our way of knowing and our way of interacting and our way of being in the world? And I don't think there's an easy answer to it. So I'm taking away here a very big caution, right, for using these. While at the same time, as you said, we should definitely use it. So as you know, it's a double thing, but we should also be wary how we use it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the only way. This is the only way.
This is the way, right? So Walter, I really love this episode, and I have one final question for you, and I hope you're ready for that one.
What is the only constant?
Yeah, but I'll be asking it, Walter. Let me ask it.
Okay.
Because I usually make it into a soundbite, yeah. So I'll ask you. Great. Are you ready for it? Okay. Walter, what is the only constant?
The only constant is, I would say, sharply, not change, but the trade-off between scale and judgment. Okay. Lower costs of producing language create higher costs of evaluating it, right? So we are basically systematically underinvesting with respect to judgment, and that's the lines on which we are developing this line at the moment with large language model. So every time knowledge become cheaper to produce, judgment become more expensive and is creating more polarization. Experts are gonna cost more than before.
That's an awesome reply. And scale and judgment, I think it's so spot on that I won't even add to it, because I completely agree. And I think it's again one of the biggest fault lines of this whole explosion of AI and this whole explosion of getting everything. And the listeners of the podcast will know that I've quoted this 1,000 times from the Bible, where God creates the whole world, full scale. And then he asks Adam to give everything name, right? Because he has to judge what is the meaning of this crap. I made this weird animal. What do you want to call it, Adam? I don't know what it is. I don't know what to use it for. That's what God says. And Adam has to sit there and give them all and say, this animal, useless. Get it away. You get my point. So unlimited supply is not unlimited demand, right?
And everything collapsed when they took the apple. And the apple, metaphorically speaking, is the knowledge of judgment, knowing what is true, what is bad, and what is good.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
The issue.
Oh, yes. And then we can move on to the Tower of Babel as well, Walter.
Yeah, if you want, of course, we can discuss metaphorically this until the end.
No, but Walter, this has been a brilliant conversation. Thank you so much for being here with me, and thank you for sharing your knowledge, and thank you for the paper, and which I really recommend people to read. It's very well written, and it's been one of the most sobering pieces of work I've read over the last year. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.